Good evening and welcome to Gunner Shot. Today we're going to discuss something very interesting. The pivots of India's strategic autonomy through BRICS and Quad. It's a new idea, and this idea came from Ambassador Trigunayat. First, let me welcome him onto the show.
Thank you,
Good
sir.
evening, sir, and welcome. We're meeting after a long time. To be very honest, I've been missing you.
Thank you, sir. So kind of you, really. Very good evening to you and the audience.
Yeah. Uh, at the outset, I must say, You know, we've spoken of strategic autonomy over the past 3 years, very more than what it used to be earlier. The concept earlier was strategic autonomy meant you did manufacturing, your economy went up, and all that. You were just multilateral, and many and you're neutral largely, and you could do Atmanirbharta and all that. And that was how you got strategic autonomy. But when you suggested that you get strategic autonomy through BRICS and Quad, which will be the pivot of your strategic autonomy, you actually opened up, the ambassador has really opened up a new facet of strategic autonomy. And that I would call the diplomatic and geopolitical strategic autonomy. There's a concept which is new, right? And the fact that if you look at examine, I mean, I'm giving you an outline so that the ambassador can then build on it. The quad, we just finished the quad, meeting, the heads of government meeting, and it went off well. And what's come out from there, that quad will collapse without India. Similarly, you look at BRICS, despite all the big talk, if India withdraws from BRICS, BRICS also will collapse. It will not get the heft it deserves. And yet, both BRICS countries and Quad countries view India with a bit of a suspicion. They can't do without it. And actually, if you look at it, and I'm giving you a virtual definition, uh, if you really are strategically autonomous, there has to be a mix of people viewing you with suspicion and trusting you at the same time, and can't do without it. And this is my small way of thinking. The rest I will leave to the ambassador because this is his original conception. So the floor is all yours.
Thank you, sir. You have really put the nail on the head, as they say. And I must say that thank you once again. When we were talking about choosing a topic, I thought that everybody looks at the strategic autonomy as some kind of a hedging by India or not taking any responsibility that has been India has been accused of, or making choices that somebody thinks should not have been made, and then totally ignoring your own national interest. I mean, that's what we have seen. You rightly mentioned exactly what we did before. At the time of independence, we were far too weak. We were economically dependent on America, on other countries' assistance. We used to have a lot of domestic problems and challenges. Yet, when the time came to choose sides, we did really chose our side and the side of the developing world, which was coming out then, or we having seen suffered from the colonialism. India went on with the full steam for decolonization, de anti-apartheid campaigns and all those, and that is something that gave us a leadership position. And then it turned out to be a non-alignment. Very often, even non-alignment was seen as neutrality, whereas it was not. But at the same time, if you remember that India did acquire a certain international heft, and we did play a certain role of a peacemaker as far as Korean crisis or others are concerned, and tried to benefit from all sides. That gave us, bought us time. Everybody even then looked at you suspicion. And if you were to see the Kissingers and Nixons and some others commentaries written about India, it was totally that they did not believe that India could do anything. Come to 2010, 2014, something like that. Now, today, what gives you the heft to become strategically autonomous in your foreign policy choices, in my view, is your comprehensive power in the country, is your economic strength, is your people, the dividend that we have. It's a youth dividend in India, the diaspora dividend which is outside, or it is a sort of a leadership that stands up and articulates it to the others. And thirdly, your capacity to call out the policies of other countries which you consider that they are not correct or not for the global good or global commons or are driven by simply geopolitics, geoeconomics. And those contestations are happening. Now it is further combined into a geotechnological contestation as we see. So we are looking at lots of apartheid regimes, whether it is in the political field, economic field, vaccine field, or in the technological field. Now, all those, a country like India, of India's size, with 1.4 billion people, with the largest population in the world, with the biggest challenges that such a big population can give, and the kind of dividends for the world that India can give, it comes from two things. One is a confidence in yourself and your capabilities to do things. And the second is that you are accepted by the world as being a benign power. And that is precisely what has given India a possibility of acting against, let's say, Western world as far as Russia was concerned. So when you take a position, or even if you abstain and your your explanation of the vote tells you, when you are in the United Nations Security Council, you stand for the principles. When you are in different areas, you become a first responder in the emergencies which are happening to the friends or the foes, everybody. So today, what we are looking at is we are looking at, since the global governance is in a crisis, and as you know, today we are going to listen to Prime Minister Modi at the future summit of the future, which is being held in New York City. I think that this global governance failure, which they're trying to salvage, for which unilaterally the P5 countries are fully responsible, and they want to subjugate the rest of the world through a so-called rule-based order. What I say rule-based order is, there is a rules-based order which they say that it emerged after 1945, but the biggest violators of this rule-based order are the countries themselves who crafted it. And that's why you have countries like China, which are not democracies, Russia, which are half democracy, who are trying to craft a very new kind of order, which they think is the multilateral context, the multipolar world, in which they are trying to acquire the leadership of rest of the countries, trying to provide an alternate governance model for the rule-based order. They said rules-based, who crafted it? Now, this was already United Nations was set up, multilateral institutions were set up. All those have not been reformed. And therefore, as I was saying in the earlier this thing, that today the Guterres, the UN Secretary General, said that very interestingly that we cannot create a future fit for our grandchildren with a system built by our grandparents. So that's the state of the international organizations. Now, in such a situation, you are given two choices. One is whether to follow like all other everybody and try to just serve your interests. Secondly, if you have an ambition to become a rising power, a big power, a sane power, which brings sanity into the international discourse, then you got to be active. You got to take decisions on the basis of what is right, what is wrong according to you. That is driven by, number one, is your own national self-interest, which is supreme for any foreign policy. And second is that by doing so, nay, you are not hurting anybody. Secondly, you are prepared to discharge your obligations to the rest of the world, which we today call as Global South. India showed during the pandemic, while rest of the world was trying to hoard the vaccines for its own geopolitical ends. India went out and provided it to 150 countries under the Vaccine Maitri program, despite having the largest population at home. Now, that is called taking their onerous responsibility for the global good and the global commons. So you fight for that. When you go into the Quad, which is in the Indo-Pacific, which is actually a geopolitical contestation between USA and China in the Indo-Pacific, and there India also becomes a major player. But what you do in that is, instead of becoming a pawn in the security architecture, and China being the biggest challenge for India as well, you still talk about a country that we want it to be inclusive. We are looking for a free and open Indo Pacific, that we want a rule based order, that there is no hegemonistic approaches, and we don't want to exclude China in that. You are looking at a possibility of China following that rule. That may not happen, but that will be then on the shoulders of China, not on India or US or any other countries. Secondly, at the same time, you are a large economy, everybody is looking at it. I remember I was in New York, and at the time, we used to have discussions because we had just opened up, our economic reforms had begun, and everybody was looking at India with a great expectation. At that time, everybody used to talk about it, that, if we take care of the baggage that shackles us, then we can go much faster. Gradually, we have risen, and we've been counted. A, for our market, for our energy, for the people, for the way the things move in India. And in fact, I remember I'm meeting Professor Jeffrey Sachs in Harvard, and he told me, he says, India is very slow, and it will not at this rate do anything. I said, well, everything is fine, but India is not up for grabs. We are not a banana republic. We will have our own pace, which has to meet with our socio-economic expectations. And that's when India decided the pace of economic reforms. When the time is ripe, when the institutions have been geared up, then you take the next step. And precisely that's the reason that today you have become the fifth largest economy, going to become the third largest economy. You have the largest population, and the growth of the population will maintain the supply of the skill sets until 2050 for the rest of the world. And after 2050, it is expected that Africa will take over. So today, the policy is driven by multi alignments with the many-lateral formats like Quad and the BRICS. Now, Quad could have its own geopolitical connotations, but India crafted a role for itself by not going the security way so much, but going through, whether it's a vaccine, that was your expertise, the critical technologies that you needed very desperately for that, the critical minerals and rare earths, those are very important going forward in the new EV era and others. Then you want to have clean energy, you want to have the climate change, you want to protect your oceans. So, for all that purpose, India became a major part, although it was simply an HADR initiative in the beginning. But it is one organization which has shown, which of course, as you know, China tried to dismiss it as a froth, or not worthwhile even bothering about it, or calling it an Asian NATO or whatever it is. But India maintained its position, and even this was again repeated by Prime Minister Modi, that Quad is a force for global good, it is not against anyone. And that is the thing that India only can get away and say it. Likewise, in the BRICS, Russia is our special and strategic partner, a privileged strategic partner. But Prime Minister was able to tell Putin that this is not an era war. Or recently, when he was in Moscow, he was able to tell him that the peace solutions don't come from the battlefield. Now, and then started acting as an interlocutor for the peace that is being appreciated by everybody. In fact, until a few months ago, everybody was criticizing India for buying oil from here, there. For which Dr. Shankar very nicely replied to the rest of the world, especially the Western countries, many times over. But the fact remains is that today everybody is recognizing that India has talked about peace, dialogue, diplomacy, respect for UN Charter in the international discourse. But we are confronted with these two major wars, which are having a major impact on our overall stability and our own, I would say, the capacity to interact. So, therefore, the peace in the region, whether it's West Asia or in Europe, it is very important for overall the health of the transitional global order. You have seen yesterday this compact has been signed, Pact for the Future has been signed, but this is prescriptive. It cannot be, it is like, in my view, the compilation of the issues that are facing the world, but left to individual countries to deal with it. In this case, when we talk of a strategic autonomy per se, the choices we make for our own interest and for the global interest, that's the difference. We don't do in a neutral manner, we do in a proactive manner. That is another thing that is happening. And that precisely explains our presence in diametrically opposite organizations, which in a geopolitical context can be seen facing each other and trying to craft a new order with their own poles. But what I look at it, even though today we are part of the Quad, we are part of the BRICS, which is expanding in a big way, I have witnessed that more and more countries today want to exercise foreign policy choices without being constrained by the relationship with the bigger powers. And they also want to exercise their strategic autonomy, which provides India, because I don't see in the emerging world order, if it is driven by Cold War 2.0, India becoming a part of either the US bloc or the China bloc, but could be a leader and lead the third bloc by itself, which I often term as nations for strategic autonomy. Now, those countries, many of them are poor, many of them are not able to express themselves so effectively, articulately. That's what India did with the voice of the Global South. Took their three Global South summits that have happened, and they have factored in all their concerns into the G20 deliberations, in the United Nations, and in bilateral discussions, including in the Quad. And the BRICS is again going to be the same way when next month we have the summit. So today we have a summit with the Quad, and then we have next month, exactly in 1 month's time, we have a Kazan summit of the BRICS, where again India will be putting together the various issues that are there. Of course, today, if you were to see between US's objectives and China and Russia objectives, they are at variance. They are opposite poles. But how do we combine for our own advantage is something that we'll have to see through our policy of the strategic autonomy. So,
Yeah, I think, sir, you made some fantastic points. One of the first things you said, in the beginning, uh, or strategic autonomy we derive through our comprehensive power, people, right? And when you say people, you spoke of the internal, growth of our own people within India, because that's changed quite a bit over the past few decades. And then the diaspora. You spoke of the stability of the leadership which we've had. For 15 years now, virtually, we're going to have a very stable leadership and the ability to call all round what is the right thing to do. And you also added the touch of soft power, especially in the pandemic. And though many people feel that it's all gone and all, but I don't think people will forget what we did for them during the pandemic in a hurry. And then, of course, there is a widespread acceptance by the world that, India means good by everyone. A lot of people say we are a benign power. More than a benign power, I think people do recognize India as being good for everyone, and that's important. The major point which you highlighted, and I would like you to probably expand on it. Today, Quad or BRICS, India is the main pillar. Like I said in the beginning, neither can Quad succeed nor BRICS succeed without India. And India has been able to temper both USA and Russia on the China on the other hand, and yet kept them in check. And if India were not there in either of these, one of these at least, then we are actually looking at Cold War 2.0 with no bridge between. So India has had this bridge. It's a very difficult role to play. And as a bridge, we've been able to exhibit strategic autonomy, right? And keep the thing going between the BRICS and the Quad. I think that's something maybe you could elaborate on. Uh, the next thing which you really said, which I thought we need to discuss more, that is that our pace has been slow and steady at our pace, not China's pace. The world wants us to go like China, but we want to grow like India so that we don't suffer China's fate. We don't suffer the demographic collapse, which is inevitable for China. A lot of people say, look, so what if the demography goes down, declines in China? It will not affect so. But I have a contrary view. After all, nations are made of people, not robots.
Yes.
So to that extent, and not robots and machines and all that, it's people who make up the nation. And China, I don't think is at a level where it can anymore ignore its demographic collapse. Okay. So, in essence, we are part of the Quad and BRICS, yet apart from it. And we are growing at our own pace. So I'd like you to elaborate on these two aspects and then we'll take it up further, sir.
Sir, thank you very much for those comments. In fact, like I would take you back to our G20 presidency. In fact, that is a very clear blend of India's strategic autonomy and the trust by all major powers. This was something that you remember that everybody was saying that it will be impossible for us to have the New Delhi Declaration issued because of the differences between Russia and USA mainly, and the West in general. However, not only those 200 meetings that were held, nearly everybody participated in those. Various contributions were made. And in fact, if you remember that we were not able to issue declarations either in the foreign ministers' meetings or the finance ministers' meeting. So there were always some kind of a differences and that happened. But India continued apace. And that is something that we have seen that there is a trust in India's capacity, which, yesterday Biden himself admitted. Putin has been singing pens of Prime Minister Modi's diplomatic style. And even for that matter, Xi Jinping understands it very well. So all the major powers do understand. We have seen, we have been a part of the G7 also. Regularly now, 11 times, 12 times we've been there. We are virtually a standard feature in that place. But we go with our own aura of sort of India is inevitable in the global scheme of things. And that's a fact, not only because of our strategic location today, because of the Sino US contestation, but because of the growing economy, because of the growing power that is wielded, that everybody acknowledges, an opportunity that India is providing. So that's very important. And so G20, we were able to work out, and it was, of course, I must give credit to our team, G20 Sherpa, Shankar, and Prime Minister Modi top it all. He had to personally speak to the leaders to get it done. And the agreement, then the declaration was issued without Russia's name being there in the whole declaration about the Russia-Ukraine war. It was mentioned, but not a name calling. If you see the Quad statement yesterday, there neither China nor Russia are mentioned,
Yeah.
which shows, I mean, they are all references are to them indirectly, but the specific names are not there. What it shows that you are becoming a bridge builder in that sense. So today, Russia trusts you, even Ukraine trusts you eventually. And they both understand that. And in fact, I was listening to a couple of commentaries from the US, and they said today India is the only country that is acceptable to the West as an honest interlocutor, and by the Russians as well, to do something. It may happen, may not happen, but that's the nature of the wars. But at the same time, a country with whom both sides are trusting. And that is coming because of the strategic autonomy. That's what I tell my American friends. I said, if like you, we had condemned, we would have been the enemy camp. There'll be no sanity, there'll be no prospect for peace. And you can't win wars in today's age and time. So you'll only have destruction everywhere. So India is trying to avoid that destruction to that place. So that's something that is very important in my view, which is what plays in India's favor all the time. And that's what we are looking at, uh, being played very smartly, I must say. I mean, instead of soft power, hard power, we call it smart power now. So that is something. So people understand what you are. You firmly say, you stick by it. You don't change your stance, despite coming under pressure from everybody. And that's what everybody respects in the international domain today. When if you are not in the alliance, you are in the opposite camp. So which is not what India follows. We don't have the alliance system that we work with. If it is an alliance, it has to be an international alliance, not driven by A superpower or the B superpower. And that's what India gives. So today, India is in a position to provide a third alternative, a more saner alternative to the very large number of countries who trust you. So when I said benign power means they know it's a power, and power, all the determinants of power we have to acquire eventually. Firstly, we have to defend ourselves from the 2 or 2.5 wars, as the our defense friends mentioned. So, if we are going to have change, we have the domestic problem, we have the terrorism as a major problem. So, you have to create international consensus against terrorism, which is a major challenge. You have to show the leadership in the biggest challenge of all times, that is climate change. India has shown the thing. We have completed all our targets among all the G20 countries. India is the first country which has completed all the commitments of the Paris Agreement. We are not the contributor to the global warming, and Prime Minister Modi yesterday say that we are not the one destroying the world. So this is something that is so when we say that, that means they are calling out everybody else to do their bit, and that's the kind of a moral authority you get when you are thinking of the global commons, the global goods, and the global welfare for a global cause. I mean, that's, I think, which is termed as sort of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam in a way, I would say, which is generic to India in a way, many ways. So I think that that is something that is giving us the kind of heft to carry on with the kind of policies that we are doing it in a very unstable world.
Yeah. So, few issues which you put across, I would like to reiterate and then we'll go to the next level. Look, what you really said is India can't be ignored anymore. No one can ignore India today. And that's the hard fact. And you can't ignore and that gives you the strength for strategic autonomy. And we've shifted from soft power to smart power, which is a very fine way of putting it. We are the third alternative to almost everyone, right? Everyone. I will say even for the global south.
Right.
And we are now looking, and people are looking at us for the future problems. The way I look at it, the future problems or the future domains in which contestation will take place are three. One is health, second is climate change, and third is energy and resources. And it is in this that I think India is all set to make a mark. Many people do think that the Quad was a watered down thing and all that. But if you see the future domains which are going to challenge us in a multi domain scenario, is where we are heading and showing leadership. I think that is something which many people are missing out. That's my view.
Right.
And all this is, you know, uh, built on a fundamental thing called trust. I'll elucidate this further. Take the three big powers, USA, Russia, and China. What they lack is global trust. Many people don't trust USA. It's a known fact. You know, China kicked trust out of the window in the past 4 5 years deliberately. There were a lot of people who were trusting China, but no more. That lot is coming down. And so is it with Russia. The large part of the West don't trust Russia. But everyone trusts India. So I'd like you to, highlight this because I think many of us miss the fact that trust is a very important ingredient of international relations and diplomacy. And you've been a diplomat and you would have had personal experience of this. I would like you to dilate on this aspect.
Absolutely, sir. I mean, I can narrate to you a story. When I was at Oxford in 90s when we had our tests, nuclear tests conducted. So when I go to the dining hall, all my European friends or even the classmates or others, they'll come and gang on me. India is a poor country and India is doing this and that, and how come? Why should you do that and this, that? And after that, and of course, I fielded them well, but the next step is people from Africa, from Asia, from everywhere else, they said, we are really happy that India has done it. Because we know that you are a responsible country, you are a responsible power, you have brought us independence, you have helped us develop. So India's actually this story in that sense has created such a tremendous goodwill. And this is continuing one after the other. You see our capacity building assistance, the high tech, we give it to 161 countries. And most of it is non-reciprocal manner and free for a large number of countries. And it is building their capacities, providing them grants for build their infrastructure, for many other things that whatever they need. That's local expertise that is being created in that. And that generates the kind of confidence in this. Secondly, what we do is, again, we got earlier things were not talked about, like India's medicines taken their AIDS and all against the AIDS in Africa and everywhere else. We have been helping them. But it came out in a very big way during the pandemic. So pandemic became an opportunity for India to reassert its sort of a Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam policy, that they care for the world. And as I mentioned earlier, that United States, for example, had hoarded 800 million dosages of a vaccine they were not going to use in their country. And were not giving it to. That's when the South African president in France said that we are living through the vaccine apartheid. So India stands for all kinds of apartheid, against all kinds of apartheid, green technology. We are the ones who call it out because we came up with this International Solar Alliance in which a large number of countries have become a partner with us, including the big ones. Everybody understands that this is one way to go forward. We are the ones every time we keep calling them that there should be a differential treatment for the countries developing world. We started off immediately that during the pandemic that the IPRs of the vaccines must be removed or suspended for some time so that the countries can get it. Very few countries do that thing at the global scale. No wonder the former Brazilian president, when he got the vaccines and other material, he said it's like Sanjeevani Booty that you have brought it for. So every country really appreciated it. And in turn, when we had the second wave, you'll be surprised that very small countries even came up and provided us oxygen cylinders and things like that. So this is a kind of an interdependency and the trust that has happened in a very large part of the world. I mean, again, G20, I come to why? Not because it was a big gala event, but because when we took over in December 22, it was the first thing that India Prime Minister actually told them that I would like to have a virtual meeting of the Global South countries. It was in a very short time, actually, it was arranged. 125 countries participated, large number of leaders in that. Now, it is very easy for any expert to write a 500-page, 200-page report, exactly what are the problems with the developing world is, what are the solutions. UN has churned out report after report. We have in India, books have been written on this. It was very easy to presume what are the requirements. But no, the idea was to have a participatory, let them speak for themselves. And that's when it happened. They told us. Likewise, to democratize the G20, what India did is least appreciated and not much appreciated by many countries, to include African Union as a permanent member with 55 countries being represented there. That's what you try to do as a leader. So that's how you develop confidence and trust. So that's, in my view personally, that particular thing of getting AU to become a permanent member in Africa is the biggest achievement of our G20 presidency. Then you focused on SDG. We focused on debt restructuring, on the real problems that these countries faced. And not only we didn't stop there, we did the second summit, we did the third summit very recently. All those are being plugged into and factored into various deliberations that are being held across the world. So this has given us the kind of, I would say, confidence to represent them and be their voice. And this is what I think today we are going to also hear in the United Nations by Prime Minister.
Yeah, I think you put things across very beautifully. We are a responsible country. What people don't know, 161 countries are recipients of our iTech program, where in many cases we just give it to them free of cost without any returns. 161 is a large number. It's almost two-thirds of all the countries who come to our iTech programs. And I can vouch for it because a lot of them come from military programs and I've interacted with them. And all our neighbors are part of the iTech. And the way G20 is come, uh, it might appear for all our viewers that the ambassador is speaking a lot about the G20. But let me give you a comparison, right? From what I've seen, I'm not a diplomat, I'm a Fauji. I've only seen Fauj. But in 1981, we held something called the non-aligned meet here. At that time, our prime minister was Indira Gandhi. I was a young captain. I was one of the ADCs to head of state. And I still remember Fidel Castro coming and hugging Mrs. Indira Gandhi on stage. It was such a big thing. All the countries who came there, it was a resounding success at that point of time. All the countries heads of countries who came there had only good things to say about India. And that was a time when, Mr. Yasser Arafat was there and, of that generation. And I thought it was a fantastic event and it projected India in those days. And that was, if you remember, it was just a little half a decade after we did the nuclear test and all that. But our economy had still not taken off. But we got generated a huge goodwill in that time. After that, G20, the same, though I was not part of the G20, when I saw the proceedings of the G20, I got the same feeling that we've done something remarkable. Many people don't underestimate what we have achieved in the G20. I think we've achieved quite a bit. So this is something which I'd like to endorse. If you compare across 4 decades, 81 kaha, 24 kaha, out of, 4 decades, the growth in the country and the growth the growth in the stature of the country has been remarkable, which is something which many people don't understand. And here I want take you back, sir, and I have a question. I would like you to explain this. Very often, many of our viewers compare India's growth with China's growth and think that we lag behind. I'd like you to explain why we need to grow slow and our r- growth, though it appears slow, is actually fast.
Very true, sir. I mean, in fact, you have seen that in 1980s that you referred to when we had the non-aligned summit. At that time, India and China were nearly the same growth rates and
Yeah.
the economy size were very similar. China started reforming much faster. It was helped a great deal by the United States and by the Western countries since 1974 by really bringing in multinational corporations and everybody, whereas India was shunned by the Americans all these years, be it the markets, be it technology, be it anything. So, because of our policy that we followed. But that gave us another incentive to develop ourselves indigenously a lot of things. We didn't have to depend or steal like China does from the technologies from other countries. We didn't have to do that. Our nuclear program, our space program, our IITs, our IIMs, our industry, everything. There was a bit of a skewed in favor of the public, but then that also is justifiable. If you were to see the situation of the time, we didn't have those many industrialists at the time. And the demands on the state were far too many. And then we had to fight these wars also in the between from the countries. But India continued consistently to grow. And even at that time, we grew 7 8%. And so economy size continued to grow in a very Indian style of many people call it Hindu rate of growth or whatever. But that is not a bad thing to really, in my view, we need to be proud of our achievements all through. And that's what has taken us to a stage where with the right mix of polity, economy, and the private sector, that you can take on a much faster tangent, you can move. And that's precisely what we are seeing happening today. You are at a place where your fundamentals are correct, everything is strong, your legal system is can perhaps be reformed faster, but it is very much there. You have the industry which is doing well, your economic performance has improved, your rules have been changed, many of the rules, hundreds and or rules of British era have been colonial era actually have been done away with. Now those are the things that cause the ease of doing business. So that's why we are seeing that our economy today, now you are seeing what is happening in China. Chinese economy is wilting. I mean, you would remember that before before I mean, I think around 90s, until we came into that crisis because of the Iraq War, the India's total FDI, 92% of the FDI used to come from our domestic savings. We had the highest domestic savings in the world, 36%. Now, then you move to FII, FDI when new economic reforms happened, and this globalization, privatization, and liberalization went ahead. So, in the last 40 years, 91 to 30 years, 91 to 30, 35 years, we are seeing that we have consistently grown, reformed, and moved forward. Now that we call it reform, perform, and transform, that stage of transformation has arrived today. And we are much faster. And that's what we are seeing today. The growth is 7.3%, let us say, or even taking out 25 crore people out of the poverty net in the past 10, 12 years, which is a very big deal. Digitization going across, we are the only country where the largest transactions take place. In a very short time, it has been achieved. We are providing digital compact. Even in the Quad, it was signed. So, Quad document, if you were to see, has Indian imprint very much clear
Very
there,
much there. Yes.
including something called Maitri, which is for
Maitri.
trading of the maritime domain. So I think
Yeah.
that is there. And I believe that we have done reasonably well, and we can be very proud of our people, in fact, whose enterprise, as we were talking about a few minutes back, is really worth credible.
Yeah, I think so, sir. As you mentioned, IITs and IIM, something came to my mind. And, few days back, I was listening to Najam Sethi, his talk in Pakistan. And what he said, look, Pakistan grew very fast at some point of time, early in the early stages, 30, 40 years of Pakistan's existence. And India didn't grow. We all laughed and we said we were very proud Pakistan was growing, India was growing at this Hindu rate of growth, as you mentioned. But he said what we didn't realize was when India was growing at the Hindu rate of growth, it was investing in IITs, IIM, and establishing its institutions, its education, and social structure and land reforms and all that. He said we didn't do that. We just kept growing the way someone else wanted without any plan. And see today where we are, and see today where they are. He says actually today we are less than the Hindu rate of growth, and India is now going to places. So actually, what the ambassador has said, I'd like to highlight that we are on the verge of a breakout. The word, the military word to use is a breakout, and we will break out. I have no doubt. And the second thing I'd like to say, he said something, digital payments and all that. UPI. UPI is such a marvelous thing which is transforming India at a rate which we don't even understand. And I'll give you an example, all of you. 4 days back, there was this, gentleman who said, in the comment section, he said, "Can I become a member of Ganashot through UPI payment? Because I don't have a credit card and all that." So I said, "Look, YouTube doesn't allow that. Let me go back to YouTube." It's been 4 days. I'm fighting with YouTube. They don't even know what UPI is, right? They don't even understand what UPI is. Very few people understand. I put two, three complaints. Let us see. So that is where today the difference between many other countries and our country is. So I think, sir, it was a wonderful way you put across. If you have any final things to say, you said. After that, I'll take a few questions.
Sir, on the UPI, I would like to say that
Yeah.
today we are thinking of talking of de-dollarization and all those kind of things as a some kind of a project by the Chinese and the Russians. But frankly,
Mm.
India on its own has done a tremendous evolution. We have signed this
Yes.
UPI thing with more than 23 countries.
Okay.
And I have been telling our friends in the Ministry of External Affairs that I think we are giving billions of dollars in loans. Why should we designate in dollars? It should be in the rupees, because after
Rupees.
all, everything is done in the rupees with those countries
Yeah.
bilaterally. Secondly, I think that even French president, he said that when he came here, he used UPI. The Indian at the Eiffel Tower, they are very much keen on working with us. So I said the Quad signed a compact, digital compact. Today, the United Nations Future of Summit digital compact is being signed, in which India is going to be a major contributor, sir, for the digital public
Yeah.
infrastructure.
Yeah. I think so. This is
That
something working like magic for us, which we don't understand.
don't
We
understand.
don't understand it. Others understand it better.
Yeah.
And forget de-dollarization, forget yuan and all that. There is something called UPIization, which is happening.
Yes. Very true.
It is happening under the carpet, right?
Right.
And sooner or later, we'll get the benefit of that.
Right.
So, with this, I'll take a few questions, sir.
Sure, sir.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not praising a particular group, but part of the honor given to India belong to the role of the Indian Army as peacekeepers, where they have upheld the best traditions of our army. Madam, thanks a lot. I took it because I must thank you for the sentiments and trust you reposed in us. This is, of course, from across the, border, Pakistani. India keeps mentioning that India is a large economy, but don't accept China's economy is 4 times bigger than India. Your view, sir. The
No, but
big things don't matter much.
that is a fact. I mean, we are not saying that it is not there, but what we are trying to do is coming from 10th to the 5th in short time, and China getting to stagnate. That's the difference. The way we are
Yeah.
growing is very different, and it is a composite growth, which is everyone sees it. Its dividends are
Mhm.
available to every Indian. That is what is more important, that equitable distribution, not through state directly, but through the enterprise that is happening. That's what you're seeing. It's a private sector driven growth in
Yeah.
India, which is significant. And the whole world is looking at India. And we are hoping to, by 2050, India and China will be on the same page if you were to go by Goldman Sachs studies.
Yeah. And I'd like to just add one thing, Ahmedji. Uh, you must please understand China is growing at the fastest rate, right? It will grow to a level where it will not have people left. वो पैसा लेके क्या करेंगे? आपको तो दे नहीं रहे, आपके पास तो ज्यादा लोग हैं, पैसा नहीं है, आप दोनों क्यों सुलह नहीं कर सकते हो? यू मस्ट डू ट्रेडिंग, यू सेंड पीपल देयर एंड टेक मनी बैक. वो तो आप कर नहीं रहे हो. वो तो आप अपना फौज लेके आपके जगह डिप्लॉय करने वाला है. वो बात अलग है, राइट? सो आई जस्ट वांट टू don't don't repose your trust in China so much. Yes, we are progressing quite well despite the continued colonial mindset of certain sections of our society. A retraining of the administration and police still maintaining a colonial stance towards Bharat and all citizens, not of their ilk, would go a long way in reinforcing our further progress. Your views?
Well, I agree with her. There is the reforms are a continuing process, and administrative reforms are very, very important. Police, for example, is the first point of defense for the people, and there it should be great transparency. I'm happy that digitization has approached there. Today, you can file FIRs online. You can follow up what is there. I can tell you just now about my passport renewal. I had just gone, and so they said that police will come to you, and somehow they were flooded, so they couldn't come. I told them, so please come. And they told me a very interesting thing. He said, "Sir, I have to come personally to your house. I have to take a picture with you and two other witnesses and upload it. Everything that I do, a verification is to be immediately uploaded. Thereafter, it becomes, you know, so the interface is becoming less and less. Income tax, for example, has become mostly faceless today.
Faceless.
So these are important changes that are taking place. But society, I'm afraid to say this, but it is a fact we must admit that in India, we still have many societal challenges that we need to contend with. Respect for women, the kind of things that we hear, those are to be controlled and must be taken very harshly, dealt with harshly, both by law enforcement agencies and the legal system together, as well as the bureaucracy. I always maintain personally that if in this industrial revolution 4.0 AI driven, which is happening, the governance architecture has to be 5.0. If that mismatch continues to exist, that gap, then you are not going to
And when,
succeed in
yeah.
that manner.
So this gentleman is from Bangladesh. He says, Dear General, the first domain that India should fight is the integrity of Indian people. Hindutva and dominion over Muslims is breaking India from within. People identify each other based on religion. I think he's wrong, sir, and I'm 100% he's wrong. I think we need to set it right because this feeling keeps coming that as if Hindutva is universal in India.
Sir,
Your
I
views,
think
sir.
that no, no, I think that this is the kind of canard and the narratives that are being, you know, circulated around. And I have served in Bangladesh, and I have seen that, and I have no hesitation in telling my friend, and it is not squaring with what you are saying. When I used to work during General Shah's time, there were 10 crore Muslims and 2 crore Hindus. General Shah will only mention 10 Das Koti Manush. He will never even count those people. Their existence was not acknowledged. Now, look at India. We had the presidents, the vice presidents, the generals, the army chiefs, the air force chiefs, the intelligence chiefs, the missile men of India are Muslims. Top actors are Muslims. In India, the Muslims don't have any barrier. Religion is not the primacy. Our constitution is still secular. So I don't think so. I mean, there are certain incidents, these kind of issues that are being created. One incident with we are the second largest Muslim nation in the world, and then some incident here and there you pick up and just start accusing India of this thing. So religion, of course, there is no very sensibly we continue to remain a country where all religions are equally respected and all people live happily. I mean, you just ask Pakistani, you were talking about, sir. I have seen so many these things. Pakistan is one of the major, I would say, problems for India as far as this disinformation campaign is concerned. Even there, they have started talking about. They now admit that what India, the Muslims can do, there is no this thing about Muslims, Christians, or this thing. Occasional incidents happen in everywhere. They happen in families. There are problems within a family. In your own family, you might be having that problem, sir. I want to tell our friend from Bangladesh. So start thinking about it as a holistic. Your country also has a very large number of minorities. Take care of them also, please.
Yeah. And let me add something. You can't put every Muslim in the same quarter in India also. Muslims in the north are different from Muslims in the south, are different from the Muslims in the east and the west. And let me tell you, in many places, the Muslims are a very progressive community and they're as part of everyone else. There's no problem, right? Uh, all this is being fed to most of you people as, some kind of information warfare. And Pakistan is adept at it. So I would request all of you to discern the truth from what is being fed to you, the canards, as the good ambassador had said, right? Yeah, this keeps coming. I think we need to talk about it. US no longer dominates in manufacturing nor in services. Its main strength is now in the US dollar as the world's preferred currency. Can BRICS create an alternative currency? Will India support it?
Well, I think this is already happening, and there is a de-dollarization, and the why it happened much faster. Although the BRICS started about this currency business in 2015, actually, not now. We are hearing it much more now under the Russian presidency. It is because the sanctions have been now. You just see the Russia-Ukraine war, how it panned out in that the terms. I call it as weaponization of four Fs. The first F is weaponization of financial instruments. When Russia was cut out from the SWIFT system, its funds, $360 billion, were confiscated by the US. And then Russia started its weaponization of food, fuel, and fertilizers, which has started impacting the whole world and not only the Europeans. So this is causing a major problem. Then dependency on the US dollar, which is a psychological currency more so. It is the most accepted currency. But BRICS countries, what they are trying to do is that there would be own system that will be means the countries will deal in their own currencies, and there will be a settlement mechanism that is being there. BRICS has already created a new development bank. It has a contingency reserve management scheme, which is there, $100 billion for that. So I think that all these systems will continue side by side. Today, even if they are in competition with one another, they are disjunct. But eventually, a time has to come when we can't go to simple barter system. We'll have to find ways to integrate all systems together. Today, there are 4 or 5 types of systems, and the currency exchange mechanisms which are there, they need to be worked out. And I think the work is going on. As far as India is concerned, as I mentioned earlier, we've already created our own UPI. We have also got our SFMS system, which is a structural foreign exchange management system. So, which is also being developed now, and will work together, and more digitization of the currency mechanisms will happen, which will make it far more easier to create alternative mechanisms.
Yeah, what I'd like to underscore with what the ambassador said is, you see, the international money transfer takes place on SWIFT, and SWIFT can be weaponized. The alternate to that today internationally is the UPI. That's the way it's coming. So you already created. And a lot of people thought it will become UN will be the one. It might not be the one. I mean, I would like your views on this, Ambassador.
No, you are right. Absolutely. I mean, this is India has taken the lead way before, and now in the BRICS also we are part of it. We are discussing it, and if it is adopted, and India has been supportive of it. Not any mechanism against the dollar or de-dollarization or this, but creating, because see, what happens is with these kind of mechanisms where you have bilateral currency swaps, it is easier. There are transaction costs are reduced, and that's very important for every country to do so. And also it will be United States will also have to learn that the dollar hegemony is not something that can continue forever.
Yeah, I think so, sir. The RH says, General, I understand that your point of view is China is the Chinese danger to India. It is widely circulated that India has supported in, I mean, USA has supported India bid for UNSC, sandbagged by the understanding that China will block India.
Yeah, I
Your
agree
views,
with
it's
you.
interesting.
But I fully agree with you. I mean, this is my view also, that not only this, now 4 out of 5 P5 countries have said and backed India's bid for a permanent Security Council seat. USA, UK, France, and Russia. All 4 of them have done it. China is the only one which says that we take into account India's aspirations for a UN Security Council seat. They are the blockers. So it is very true that all these countries make big, tall claims. President Biden just made it. It has also been included in the UN in the Quad statement as well, and it will be reiterated once again today that reforms India should be there. Today, India is not demanding to be part of the UN Security Council. It is commanding it that respect, and that's the reason it wants to be. One of the uh, audience member mentioned about our peacekeeping operations and the kind of work that India has done tremendously in keeping the peace in the world. Now, those are the things. So I fully agree that this they all know that China is not going to support India's candidature, so therefore it will not happen. But time has to come when the UNGA has to become irrespective of the veto power.
Yeah, it's a matter of time. That's about all. Sir, views on the recent developments with France around critical technology from strategic autonomy perspective.
Well, I think that we are still at a nascent stage of developing many of the technologies. So, whether we like it or not, we'll have to collaborate with many countries. We are doing it with France, as they say, France is India's Russia in Europe. We have it with the United States. We have this ICET. We have upgraded our this with other countries from Germany, from elsewhere, wherever it is possible. But at the same time, there will always be delays. There will always be their geopolitical objectives before actually a certain technology is really transferred to you. Now,
Yeah.
that is something that you might face uh, some kind of hitch or a glitch from certain countries in transferring technology to you if you are not an ally to that country. And therefore, we have to be very selective in making our partners and from where we get technologies. We are all insisting now, even in the defense sector, that if you are going to manufacture, it has to be transfer of technology, has to be an integral part of it. We have to also develop our capacities to be able to absorb it. While we are developing our R&D capabilities, I think a new model for technology development needs to be built in.
Today we're getting very interesting questions, sir. Ambassador Trigunayat, India has the strategic need as a hedge versus China. USA, India has the US, yeah, strategic need. Similar to 1970s, China versus USSR, but it lacks a Kissinger's like support, unlike China had. Why does India lack such support? It's basically, we get the larger issue.
Yeah. No, the
Your
one thing
views,
is
sir.
very simple. I mean, none of these superpowers, like a highly independent point of view, which is always India has stood for. And that's what the strategic autonomy that we are talking about. They don't love it. But because of their own geopolitical compulsions and what is happening in India, they are forced to really reckon with India and cooperate with India because their own overall geostrategic competition with China is very much there. Secondly, as far as this question is concerned, I would just like to say is I believe firmly that we have to stand on our own and not on the back of either the United States or any other country. And we have to build our strength to that level, be it defense, be it economy, be it our political resolve, be our technological upgradation. In all the domains, we have to work ourselves. And because a big country like India cannot be subject to somebody else's mercy.
Hmm. Hello, sir. Good evening. Don't you think, sir, France has become more reliable than Russia for India? And also, Russia is going closer and closer to China, Pakistan.
Well, France has been our partner for a very long time, and if you know, the France has a history of its own Atmanirbharta as far as the development of the defense industry is concerned. It's worth reading actually. The France's self reliance in the defense used to import all the time, but then later on has become a major exporter and technology also. And they are the ones who trust India. They want to supply to India, and they want to work with India. That is something that is very important. So they definitely, as I said, and you rightly mentioned about this now that it's our Russia in France. As far as Russia is concerned, currently it's going through a war. It has its facilities stretched. There is no doubt about it. But Russia also has the tremendous capacities. And I have served in Russia 2 terms, 7 years. And I have visited across the country, which is the largest country in the world. And you will be surprised the kind of technological achievements that they have, this superiority, the kind of I would say research that they have done or they are doing it is no less actually. So, and it is the only another dependable partner that has stood with us in the test of time. So, Russia relationship is very important. Now, it is also true that under the current timing, when the problem of geopolitics between US and Russia is happening, Russia is forced to depend on China a great deal. That is there. But do not forget that Russia is also a civilizational country. Civilizational countries can't be subjugated, can't play second fiddle. It's in their very nature. And that's what we are talking strategic autonomy today. The fact is that Russia needs India to counter China, while they need China to counter the US.
Yeah, Satyanarayan has a comment to add to what we have said. He says Muslims in India have more rights than Hindus. Our Bangladesh friends ought to know about it. So that's his view. I'll leave it at that. Uh, okay. Last question, sir. How much is the US-India relationship dependent on politics? Feels like under Republicans it's fine. Under Democrats they preach human rights, interfere and support disruptive figures.
Well, I think that one of my colleagues has written very interesting thing, and he has said that whether it is Democrats or Republicans, they look at their own interest first. And in the US, it is the deep state and the strong lobbies that operate. Therefore, a large number of countries who want something in India do in the US follow that example and that instrument. And so I have no illusion that the US will do anything for us, but it'll do its own interest. It needs India. It'll like to beef up India, a stronger India, share something with India. And as long as we can get sufficient intelligence and some good equipment and technology, I think we are fine with that. So they have administrations, certain presidents have done better. And Bush, you are right. I mean, during Bush time, we had the civil nuclear agreement, which was signed. He personally spoke to the Chinese president, asking him to not object to India's. But then you have, Trump also was there, who imposed sanctions, withdrew GSP benefits from India, calls India an abuser of all this. So these are the things they look at their own angles first. But the US is driven by its deep state. Let's not forget.
Yeah. So the last comment I'll take and then we'll close it. Feels like India will become a trusted, decent power in the near future. That's what we hope. So at the end of the day, I'd like to thank you for your discourse. You brought in a new, outlook on strategic autonomy. And I do wish that many more people come and participate in these shows. If you like this video, please press the like button and also subscribe to Gana Shot. And I must compliment our audience today for coming out with some very thought-provoking questions. In the recent past, whenever we discussed Bangladesh, there were a lot of emotions, and I really didn't get questions. Today, I'm very happy that a lot of good questions have come out, and we've spent some quality time addressing those. And those added to what the ambassador said. Sir, your last word, and then we'll close.
Sir, I think that we are on the right path and we will be a developed country by 2047 or even before.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a
Thank you.
lot. Jai Hind to you and Jai Hind to
Jai Hind,
all
sir. Jai Hind.
the viewers. Thank
Jai
you.
Hind.